The chandeliers in the Coral Lux's oceanfront restaurant glittered like diamonds above white tablecloths and $1,000 handbags. At table 12, a woman in a torn raincoat and muddy sneakers pushed away a plate that had just held a $240 truffle-crusted lobster. She looked up at the restaurant manager with tired, steady eyes and said, "I'm not paying that bill." Kendra Collins felt her smile freeze into something sharp. "Excuse me? I don't have any money," the woman answered, voice soft, almost apologetic. "I just wanted one meal that tasted like the world wasn't ending." The room went quiet enough to hear ice melt in crystal glasses. Conversations died mid-sentence. A influencer's phone slipped from her hand and clattered against a bread plate. Kendra's hand was already reaching for the discreet panic button under the host stand when Sofia Rivera, 24, ponytail fraying at the ends, apron stained from a double shift, stepped between them. "I've got it," Sofia whispered. She pulled every dollar she had earned that week from her apron pocket, 240 exactly, and slid the cash into the register before Kendra could stop her. Turning to the woman, she pleaded under her breath, "Please go. Now. Before they make this worse." The woman rose slowly. For a moment the noise of the restaurant seemed to vanish. She placed a weathered hand on Sofia's wrist and said, low and certain, "You have a rare heart, Sofia Rivera. You will be repaid 1,000 times over." Then she walked out into the Miami night, leaving the scent of rain and something expensive behind her. Kendra's fury hit Sofia like a slap. "You just threw away your rent for a homeless con artist. One more stunt like that and you're gone. Do you hear me?" Sofia nodded, throat tight, already calculating how many extra shifts she would need to cover her brother's next hospital payment. Across the street, hidden behind tinted glass, Raina Copeland lowered the phone that had recorded every second. A small, sad smile touched her lips. Test number 1, passed. 19 hotels had already failed. This was the last chance to find someone worth saving, and someone worth trusting with an empire. Raina let the phone rest against her thigh and stared at the glowing entrance of the Coral Lux. The building rose 15 stories above the Atlantic, all glass and light, a palace her own mother had once dreamed of entering. 20 years ago Evelyn Copeland had stood outside a different Copeland property in a hospital gown and slippers, bald from chemotherapy, begging for a room because the treatment center had lost her reservation. The night manager had turned her away. She had died 3 weeks later in a county ward. Raina had been 17. She had sworn that day that no one would ever again be judged by appearance inside a building that carried her family name. Now, at 37, she owned every one of those buildings. $12 billion and 200 properties worldwide, yet the anonymous complaints kept coming. Guests treated like royalty if they arrived in a Rolls-Royce, ignored or humiliated if they looked ordinary. Staff burned out, terrified of managers who valued profit over people. Raina had tried training programs, mystery shoppers and designer clothes, policy overhauls. Nothing changed the culture. So she had done the only thing left. She had become the person her mother had once been. For 7 days she had wandered from city to city in the same torn raincoat, the same muddy sneakers, the same unwashed hair. She had ordered the most expensive items on every menu, then refused to pay. In New York they called the police within 4 minutes. In Los Angeles they photographed her for security files and posted her face in the staff WhatsApp with the caption, "Known Dine and Dash." In Dallas the manager had laughed in her face and told her to try the soup kitchen down the road. 19 failures. 19 times she had walked away with a heavier heart and a growing certainty that the empire her father had built was rotting from the inside. Tonight was the final test. The Coral Lux was the flagship, the property that still bore her mother's favorite shade of seafoam green in the lobby mosaics. If this hotel failed too, Raina had already decided to sell the entire chain and walk away forever. She had not expected Sofia Rivera. Raina closed her eyes and replayed the moment in high definition. The way Sofia's hand had trembled when she counted out the bills. The way she had angled her body to shield the homeless woman from the staring crowd. The way her voice had cracked on the word please. In 7 days and 20 cities, no one else had paid. No one else had even hesitated. A notification pinged on her second phone, the one only 3 people in the world had the number to. A single line from her assistant: "Security feed from Coral Lux restaurant is clean and saved. Ready when you are." Raina exhaled, long and slow. She was not ready. She never was when it came to this part. But the test had to continue. Inside the restaurant, the incident at table 12 rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. Guests whispered behind manicured hands. Phones rose discreetly to capture Kendra Collins as she marched Sophia toward the service corridor, heels clicking like gunshots on marble. "You have any idea how this makes us look?" Kendra hissed the moment the swinging door closed behind them. "We have a reputation to protect. People pay thousands a night to stay here because they expect a certain standard. And you just handed $240 to a vagrant who probably spent it on drugs the second she left." Sophia kept her gaze on the scuffed floor tiles. She was hungry. "Hungry?" Kendra laughed, sharp and humorless. "Half the city is hungry. That doesn't mean we open the doors to every sob story that wanders in off the beach. Your unwritten warning. One more incident and you're out. No references. No severance. Nothing. Do I make myself clear?" "Perfectly clear," Sophia said. Her voice did not shake. She had learned long ago that shaking only gave people like Kendra satisfaction. Kendra stormed off to glad hand a table of cryptocurrency investors who had just ordered the 1996 Krug by the Magnum. Sophia slipped into the staff restroom, locked the door, and finally let her shoulders sag. She pulled out her phone and stared at the bank app balance, $11.47. Her brother Mateo's next dialysis payment was due in 9 days. $8,000. She had been picking up every extra shift for 3 months and still wasn't close. She pressed her forehead against the cool mirror and whispered the same prayer she had whispered every night since Mateo got sick. "Please let something good happen. Just once." Outside, the Miami night settled warm and humid over the city. Tourists laughed on Ocean Drive. Yachts cut white wakes across the dark water. And in the shadowed interior of a black town car parked beneath a swaying palm, Raina Copeland watched the restaurant doors through night vision binoculars, waiting to see what tomorrow would bring. She already knew she would be back. The test was not over. One act of kindness was beautiful, but empires were not built on single moments. She needed to know if Sophia's heart stayed steady when the cost grew higher. Raina set the binoculars down and spoke to the empty car. "Tomorrow we raise the stakes." The driver, a former Navy SEAL who had guarded her for 8 years, met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Same disguise?" "Same disguise," Raina confirmed. "But this time I won't be leaving so quickly." She leaned her head against the cool leather seat and closed her eyes. For the first time in 7 days, hope felt less like a luxury and more like a possibility. Inside the Coral Lux, the chandeliers kept glittering, the wine kept flowing, and no one except Sofia Rivera suspected that the woman in the torn raincoat had just changed everything. The first test had been passed. The real evaluation was only beginning. The Miami sun rose pink and relentless over the Atlantic, turning the Coral Lux's glass facade into a mirror of fire. Inside the staff locker room, Sofia Rivera tied her apron with fingers that still trembled from lack of sleep. She had lain awake until the early hours, staring at the cracked ceiling of the tiny apartment she shared with her brother, replaying the moment she handed over every dollar she had to a stranger in a torn raincoat. Mateo had stirred around 3, feverish again, asking for water. She had carried him the cup with shaking hands and promised him, the way she always did, that everything would be fine. She had not told him the hospital had already sent the final notice. $8,000 or they would remove him from the dialysis schedule in 9 days. She had 9 days to find a miracle. Now, standing in front of the time clock at 6:47 a.m., she punched in and whispered the same prayer she had whispered in the restroom mirror the night before. "Please let something good happen. Just once." The breakfast service began at 7 sharp. The restaurant filled quickly with guests in linen and sunglasses, voices bright from last night's champagne. Sophia moved between tables on autopilot, refilling coffee, clearing plates of smoked salmon and gold leaf croissants, smiling the smile that had kept her employed for 3 years even when her feet bled through her shoes. She did not notice the woman in the torn raincoat until she was almost upon her. Raina stood just outside the glass doors that led to the outdoor terrace, one hand pressed against the frame for support. The same muddy sneakers, the same coat now stiff with dried salt. But something was different. Her face was gaunter, the shadows under her eyes deeper, as if she truly had not eaten since the lobster 24 hours ago. She caught Sophia's gaze through the glass and lifted a trembling hand in a small, pleading gesture. Sophia's heart lurched. She glanced toward the host stand where Kendra Collins was already prowling, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning for the slightest imperfection. Last night's warning echoed in Sophia's ears like a drumbeat, one more incident and you're out. She should walk away. She should pretend she had not seen. Instead she found herself pushing through the service door into the kitchen. The breakfast cooks barely looked up as she assembled a plate with mechanical efficiency, 2 eggs scrambled soft, a slice of honey-glazed ham, fresh fruit, a warm croissant still steaming from the oven. She wrapped it all in a cloth napkin, tucked a bottle of orange juice into her apron pocket, and slipped out the side exit that opened onto the delivery alley. Raina was waiting exactly where the security cameras could not see, pressed against the wall beneath the exhaust vents. She looked smaller in daylight, almost fragile. I shouldn't be doing this, Sophia said, voice cracking as she handed over the plate. My manager banned me from helping you. If she finds out, I lose my job. Raina took the food with both hands, as though it might vanish. Then why risk it? Because no one should go hungry, Sophia answered simply. Not even once. She reached into her apron and pulled out the last of her cash, 2 20s and a 10, everything she had earned in tips before the lobster incident wiped her out. She pressed the bills into Raina's palm. For tomorrow. Please don't come back here. It isn't safe for either of us. Raina closed her fingers around the money, eyes never leaving Sophia's face. Some risks are worth more than safety, she said quietly. Then she was gone, disappearing around the corner toward the beach path before Sophia could reply. Sophia stood in the alley a moment longer, breathing in the scent of hot grease and ocean air, wondering if she had just signed her own termination papers. She had. The first camera caught her at 7:19 a.m. exiting the service door with a wrapped plate. The second camera recorded her handing the food to the woman in the torn coat. By 7:34 the footage was on Kendra's tablet. Kendra waited until the breakfast rush slowed, then summoned Sophia to the manager's office with the same sweet smile she used on VIP guests. The moment the door closed, the smile vanished. Sit, Kendra ordered. Sophia sat. Kendra turned the tablet around so Sophia could watch herself committing career suicide in crisp 4K. The footage looped twice, silent and damning. I was very clear last night, Kendra said, voice low and venomous. No contact with that woman. No exceptions. Yet here you are, not 12 hours later, stealing food and giving away cash to a known vagrant. Do you think rules don't apply to you, Sophia? I paid for the food, Sophia said. Her voice sounded small even to herself. It didn't cost the restaurant anything. You stole time. You stole labor. You violated a direct order. Kendra leaned forward, manicured nails drumming the desk. You're on final probation. Effective immediately, 2 days pay docked. One more violation and you are terminated without notice. Am I understood? Sophia swallowed hard. 2 days pay was $400 she did not have. Understood. Get out of my office. Sophia walked back into the restaurant on legs that felt borrowed. The room spun slightly. $400 gone. $8,000 still needed. 9 days left. She picked up a tray of mimosas and carried it to table 6 with the same smile she had worn since she was 16 and learned that customers tipped better when you looked like you had never cried in your life. Across the street, in the same black town car that had idled there all night, Raina watched the alley camera feed on her phone. She saw Sophia emerge, shoulders bowed, face pale but composed. She saw Kendra follow moments later, triumph in every line of her body. Raina's fingers tightened around the phone until her knuckles whitened. She opened a new note and typed with careful precision. Coral Lux, Day 2. Subject, Sofia Rivera. Second act of kindness observed. Performed at direct risk of termination and financial hardship. Subject, Kendra Collins. Response, punitive, disproportionate, cruel. Conclusion, pattern confirmed. She saved the note, then opened another app and transferred $50,000 into an account labeled only with a string of numbers. Not yet. Soon. Raina leaned back against the leather seat and closed her eyes. She had designed this test to be brutal. She had expected to find indifference, maybe incompetence. She had not expected to find someone willing to sacrifice everything twice in 24 hours for a stranger who had nothing to offer in return. The car's intercom crackled. Ma'am, the alley is clear. Shall I pull around? No, Raina said. We stay. I want to see what she does next. Because the test was not over. It had only become personal. Back inside the Coral Lux, Sophia cleared tables with mechanical grace, her mind racing through numbers that never added up right. She did not notice the way some of the line cooks watched her with quiet respect, or the way the elderly couple at table 9 slipped a $100 bill under their plate with a note that read "Thank you for being kind." She only noticed the weight of the final probation paper in her apron pocket, and the way the ocean outside the windows looked suddenly too bright, too indifferent, too vast. 9 days. She had 9 days to save her brother. And somewhere in the city, a woman in a torn raincoat was deciding whether Sophia deserved to save herself too. Raina Copeland rested her forehead against the cool window of the town car and watched the Coral Lux shimmer in the morning light like a jewel she no longer recognized. The driver had parked in the same shadowed spot for 36 hours now, engine off, tinted windows up, a ghost vehicle no one noticed. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and the salt that clung to Raina's disguise. She had not changed clothes since leaving New York. She had not showered. She had not slept more than 20 minutes at a time. She wanted to feel what her mother had felt. The memory rose uninvited, as it always did when she closed her eyes. 17-year-old Raina sitting on a plastic chair in a hospital corridor that smelled of bleach and fear. Her mother, Evelyn, wrapped in a thin blanket, bald head shining under fluorescent lights, trying to smile while the oncology nurse explained that the hotel had cancelled their reservation because the card was declined. Evelyn had used every favor, every contact, to book a single night at the Copeland Palm Beach so she could rest between treatments instead of driving 3 hours home. The manager had taken one look at the sick woman in the wheelchair, the terrified teenager beside her, and decided they did not belong. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he had said, not sounding sorry at all. "We have standards." 3 weeks later Evelyn was dead. Raina had buried her in the same dress she had planned to wear to Raina's graduation. Then she had gone to college, then to business school, then to war with every board member who had ever dismissed her as the grieving daughter. By 30 she owned the majority shares. By 35 she owned everything. And still the complaints kept coming. Guests ignored because they wore last season's clothes. Children turned away from pools because their parents spoke with accents. Elderly couples asked to leave the lobby because they lowered the tone. Anonymous letters slipped under doors, emails sent to investor relations, posts on travel forums that never quite named the chain but everyone knew. Raina had tried everything. She had fired executives. She had rewritten manuals. She had spent millions on sensitivity training that changed nothing once the trainers left. People performed for cameras and clipboards. They did not change their hearts. So she had become the test herself. She opened the secure folder on her phone labeled Mother. 20 video files, one for each property she had visited in the last 7 days. She pressed play on the first. Los Angeles, 4 nights ago. Reina in the same torn coat, asking for a simple room because her mother was sick. The clerk had smirked and said they were booked solid, a lie. The occupancy report later showed 43%. Security had escorted her out while guests filmed on their phones for social media clout. She skipped to Dallas. She had ordered a single cup of tea in the lobby lounge and sat for an hour pretending to wait for someone. The manager had approached 3 times, each time more aggressively, until he finally threatened to call the police for loitering. She had left before they arrived, but not before hearing him tell his staff, "We don't do charity cases here." One by one the videos played. Miami Beach, Orlando, Las Vegas, New York. 19 hotels. 19 failures. 19 times she had walked away with the taste of her mother's last night on earth in her mouth. Then she opened the file labeled Coral Lux, Day 1. The footage was crystal clear. Sophia stepping between Kendra and the vagrant, counting out bills with shaking fingers, shielding Reina with her own body. The whispered please. The way Sophia's shoulders had squared when Kendra threatened her, as if she had decided long ago that fear would not make her cruel. Reina watched it 3 times. Then she opened the new file from this morning. The alley camera. Sophia risking everything again for a plate of eggs and a few dollars she could not spare. She closed the phone and pressed it against her chest like a talisman. 19 failures, she whispered to the empty car. And one miracle. Her driver, Marcus, met her eyes in the rearview mirror. He had been with her since the first hostile takeover, had seen her cry only twice, the night her mother died and the night she realized money could not fix what was broken inside her company. "You're sure about this one?" he asked quietly. "I've never been more sure of anything." Reina opened another app, this one connected directly to the Coral Lux's security system. She had owned the hotel for 18 months, long enough to have every camera feed routed to her private server the day the purchase closed. She scrolled through the morning timestamps until she found Sophia. There she was, moving between tables with the same exhausted grace, refilling water glasses no one thanked her for, smiling at children who spilled orange juice on $1,000 rugs. Every few minutes her hand brushed the pocket where the final probation notice lived. Every few minutes her eyes flicked toward the alley door, as if expecting the woman in the torn coat to appear again. Reina zoomed in on Sophia's face. The dark circles. The tight line of her mouth when she thought no one was watching. The way she paused sometimes, just for a second, to steady herself against a wall when the weight became too much. Reina knew that look. She had seen it in her mother's eyes the night they were turned away. She closed the feed and opened her notes again. Coral Lux, final observation. Sofia Rivera has now risked her livelihood twice in 24 hours for a complete stranger. No other employee in 20 properties has shown even basic decency once. Conclusion: the rot is absolute everywhere except here. Recommendation: remove toxic management immediately. Elevate Sofia Rivera to leadership role. Begin empire-wide reform with Coral Lux as proof of concept. She saved the note, encrypted it, and sent it to the only 3 people in the world who knew what she was doing: her lawyer, her head of security, and the executive assistant who had guarded her calendar for 15 years. Then she did something she had not done in 7 days. She cried. Not the silent tears of a billionaire in a private jet, but the ugly, wrenching sobs of the 17-year-old girl who had watched her mother die because someone decided she looked poor. Marcus handed her tissues without comment. When it passed, Reina wiped her face with the sleeve of the torn raincoat and looked at the hotel again. Tomorrow night the charity gala would fill the restaurant with Miami's richest and most influential. Tomorrow night she would walk in wearing the clothes she was born to wear and end this experiment forever. But first she needed one more piece of proof. One final test to be certain Sophia's heart was as steady as it appeared. She opened the glove compartment and took out a small plastic bag containing a cheap prepaid phone and a single photograph, Sophia's brother Mateo in his hospital bed, thin and smiling bravely for the camera. Reina had obtained it through channels that would make most people uncomfortable. She slipped the phone into the pocket of the raincoat. Tomorrow Sophia would receive a call from a desperate stranger claiming to be a friend of the woman she had helped. The stranger would beg for money for medicine. $500. 1,000. Whatever Sophia could spare. Reina needed to know if the kindness held when no one was watching at all. She hated herself for it. But empires were not saved by sentiment. They were saved by certainty. Reina leaned back and closed her eyes. The sun climbed higher, turning the car into a greenhouse. Somewhere inside the Coral Lux, Sofia Rivera carried trays and smiled at people who would never know how close they had come to losing her. And in the shadowed interior of a town car that no one noticed, a billionaire in a torn raincoat waited for tomorrow, carrying the weight of 20 failures and one fragile, impossible hope. The sky over Miami cracked open just after noon, a sudden tropical downpour that turned the oceanfront terrace of the Coral Lux into a sheet of hammered silver. Inside the restaurant, the lunch service hummed along under the golden chandeliers, untouched by the storm. Guests laughed behind tall windows while the rain lashed the glass like thrown gravel. Sophia moved between tables with the careful precision of someone balancing on a crumbling ledge. Every step felt borrowed. Every smile cost something she was running out of. The final probation notice in her apron pocket had begun to feel heavier than the trays of lobster bisque and chilled champagne flutes she carried. She did not see Kendra until it was too late. The restaurant manager appeared at the entrance to the kitchen corridor like a storm friend of her own, tablet in hand, face arranged into the particular cold triumph she reserved for public corrections. The lunch rush had thinned enough for every server, busser, and line cook to hear what came next. Everyone, Kendra called, voice carrying without effort, gather round. We have a teaching moment. Sophia's stomach dropped. She set the tray on the nearest service station and walked forward because there was nothing else to do. The other staff formed a loose semicircle, some curious, some already uncomfortable. Rain hammered the roof like distant gunfire. Kendra tapped her tablet and the alley footage from that morning began to play on the large monitor usually reserved for private dining menus. There was Sophia at 7:19 a.m., handing a wrapped breakfast plate and cash to the woman in the torn raincoat. The camera angle was merciless. Every detail crystal clear. I gave explicit instructions last night, Kendra announced to the room. No contact with the vagrant. No exceptions. Yet less than 12 hours later, Sophia decided her judgment was superior to mine and to hotel policy. She turned the tablet off with a theatrical snap. Sophia, do you have anything to say? The silence stretched until it hurt. Sophia tasted copper where she had bitten the inside of her cheek. I paid for the food myself, she said quietly. It didn't cost the restaurant anything. That is not the point, Kendra snapped. The point is obedience. The point is protecting our brand from people who do not belong here. You have now violated direct orders twice in 24 hours. Your employment is terminated effective at the end of this shift. Security will escort you out at 3 o'clock. A collective intake of breath rippled through the staff. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another server, Javier, took a half step forward as if to protest, then thought better of it when Kendra's gaze sliced toward him. Kendra was not finished. Before you leave us, however, you will demonstrate what happens when staff forget their place. The terrace needs cleaning. Every table, every chair, every tile. You will do it now. In the rain. Consider it your exit interview. She tossed a bucket and a long-handled brush toward Sophia's feet. The plastic clattered loudly on the marble floor. Sophia stared at the bucket for a long moment. Rain roared against the windows like an animal trying to get in. Somewhere in the distance thunder rolled low and threatening. She picked up the bucket without a word. The terrace was exposed on 3 sides, open to the storm. Within seconds the rain soaked her uniform to the skin, turning the white blouse transparent, plastering her ponytail to her neck. Cold water ran down her back in rivers. She scrubbed tables that would only be dirty again the moment the next gust blew leaves across them. She wiped chairs that no guest would sit in until the storm passed. She worked on her knees because the brush was too tall and the tiles too slippery to stand safely. Guests watched from inside, some filming on their phones, others turning away in second-hand embarrassment. A child pressed his face to the glass and waved. His mother pulled him back with a horrified expression. Sophia kept scrubbing. Her phone, sealed in a plastic bag in her apron pocket, began to vibrate against her hip. She ignored it until the vibration became frantic, one call after another. Finally she stepped under the small overhang by the service door and answered with numb fingers. Sophia? Mateo's voice was thin, frightened. The hospital just called. They said if the $8,000 isn't paid by tomorrow morning they have to take me off the machine. They said they're sorry but there are rules. A pause filled with static and tears. I'm scared, Sophie. The world tilted. Sophia slid down the wall until she sat in a puddle, phone pressed to her ear, rain dripping from her lashes like tears. She no longer had the strength to cry. I'm coming, she managed. I'll fix it. I promise. She hung up before he could hear her voice break. Inside her head the numbers arranged themselves into a guillotine. $8,000 needed by tomorrow, $400 already docked, rent due in 6 days, no job after 3 o'clock, no references, no savings, nothing. She had lost everything for helping a stranger who had vanished into the city with a plate of eggs and $50. The rain kept falling. The terrace tiles gleamed mockingly clean under the storm. Eventually Javier appeared with a clean towel and a whisper. Kendra's distracted with some influencer table. Go change before you freeze. Sophia walked through the kitchen on legs that did not feel like her own. The cooks avoided her eyes. Someone had left a dry uniform folded on a crate with a sticky note that read "We got you." She changed in the staff restroom, locked the door, and finally let the breakdown come. She cried the way people do when the last piece of ground gives way beneath them, soundless, shoulders shaking, hands pressed over her mouth so no one would hear. She cried for Mateo who might die because she had chosen kindness over caution. She cried for the mother who had taught her that helping someone in need was never wrong, even when it hurt. She cried for the girl she had been before hospital bills and double shifts and the slow erosion of hope. When the tears ran out she sat on the closed toilet lid and stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Red eyes, wet hair, uniform 2 sizes too big because it belonged to someone else. She looked like someone who had already lost. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Hello? Her voice came out raw. Sofia Rivera? A woman's voice, low and unfamiliar. My name is Maria. I'm a friend of the woman you helped yesterday and this morning. She told me what you did. She's very sick and needs medicine tonight. The pharmacy won't release it without $500 up front. She has no one else. Please. I know it's a lot to ask. Sophia closed her eyes. $500. She had $11.47 in the bank. I'm sorry, she whispered. I wish I could help. I really do. But I don't have it. The line went quiet for a long moment. Then the woman said, softly, thank you anyway. For being the kind of person who wishes she could. The call ended. Sophia set the phone on the sink and stared at it until the screen went dark. She had officially reached the bottom. There was no lower to fall. She dried her face with rough paper towels, squared her shoulders, and walked back into the kitchen to finish her final shift. Outside, the rain began to ease, leaving the world washed clean and indifferent. Across the street, in the town car that had become Reina's second skin, the prepaid phone went silent in her hand. She had made the call herself, voice disguised, heart hammering against her ribs. $500 would have been nothing to ask if Sophia still had hope. But Reina had just watched her give away her last dollars twice, lose her job, learn her brother might die, and still answer a stranger's plea with regret instead of anger. Reina closed her eyes and felt the weight of 20 years settle on her shoulders. Tomorrow night the gala would begin at 8. Tomorrow night she would walk in wearing the armor of her real life and end this. Tonight she sat in the darkening car and allowed herself one truth she had never spoken aloud. Sofia Rivera had not just passed the test. She had saved Reina's faith in humanity when nothing else could. The rain had stopped, but the night air hung heavy with its aftermath, thick, warm, and smelling of wet palm leaves and distant ocean. Across from the Coral Lux, the black town car sat in the same shadowed slot it had occupied for 3 days. Inside, the glow of Reina Copeland's phone painted her face in cold blue light. On the screen, a silent security feed showed the staff restroom door. The camera in the corridor caught only angles and glimpses, but it was enough. Sofia sat on the floor now, back against the locked door, knees drawn to her chest. Her shoulders rose and fell in the small, defeated rhythm of someone whose tears had run dry but whose body still needed to finish the crying. Every few seconds she wiped her face with the sleeve of the borrowed uniform, then stared at nothing. Reina watched without blinking. She had watched people break before. Board members in glass offices. Rival CEOs across negotiation tables. But never like this. Never someone who had nothing left to lose and still chose kindness anyway. She closed the feed. For a long moment the car was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioning and the soft tick of cooling metal. Marcus waited behind the wheel, eyes forward, giving her the privacy she rarely asked for. "I'm done testing her," Reina said at last. Her voice sounded unfamiliar, scraped raw. "She suffered enough." Marcus nodded once. In the rearview mirror his reflection showed no surprise. He had known the moment Sofia handed over her last $50 in the alley. Reina opened the armored compartment between the seats and removed a garment bag and a small leather case. She had carried both since New York, waiting for the night she would finally step out of the shadows. "Pull around to the service entrance on the south side," she instructed. "Dim the lights." 5 minutes. Marcus eased the car forward, tires whispering over wet asphalt. He stopped beneath the awning where delivery vans usually idled. The alley was empty, the kitchen staff had gone home hours ago. Reina slipped out of the torn raincoat and let it fall to the floor like a shed skin. Underneath she wore only a simple silk slip, the color of moonlight on water. She unzipped the garment bag and drew out the white silk suit she had chosen months ago for this exact moment, tailored trousers that skimmed her legs like a second skin, a sleeveless jacket with a neckline sharp enough to cut glass. No jewelry except the thin platinum watch that had belonged to her mother. She changed quickly, efficiently, the way a soldier dons armor before battle. The slip went into a plastic evidence bag, the raincoat followed. She would burn them later. She opened the leather case and removed a small bottle of hotel shampoo she had taken from the first property that failed her. She wet her hands from a water bottle, worked the shampoo through her hair until the salt and grime were gone, then combed it smooth with her fingers. It fell in a dark, glossy wave to her shoulders. When she looked into the hand mirror Marcus held up, the woman staring back was someone the world recognized from magazine covers and Forbes lists. Reina Copeland, 37, net worth $12 billion, the most powerful woman in hospitality and, until tonight, one of the loneliest. She applied no makeup. She did not need it. The exhaustion in her eyes was real, and tonight she wanted the world to see it. Marcus handed her a pair of low white leather sneakers, spotless, chosen because they were the only concession to comfort she would allow herself. She slipped them on, then took the slim phone that held every piece of evidence she had collected. "Ready?" Marcus asked. Reina drew a breath that tasted of salt and possibility. "Ready." The charity gala had begun at 8. By 9:30 the restaurant was a constellation of crystal and camera flashes. Miami's elite filled every table, influencers in borrowed diamonds, investors in quiet linen suits, socialites whose names opened doors on 3 continents. A string quartet played Vivaldi under a canopy of fairy lights. Champagne flowed in rivers. The storm had passed, leaving the terrace doors open so that warm, rain-washed air drifted in with the scent of night-blooming jasmine. Reina stepped through the main entrance alone. Conversation faltered like a record scratch. Heads turned in a slow ripple. Phones rose. The string quartet missed a beat, then recovered. She was taller than most people expected. The white suit caught the light and threw her back like a blade. Her hair moved with each step, dark and perfect. She did not smile. She did not need to. The room bent toward her the way iron filings bend toward a magnet. Kendra Collins appeared as if conjured, materializing at Raina's elbow with the practiced urgency of a woman who smelled money and influence. "Good evening," Kendra said, voice honey over steel. "We are so honored. Please allow me to escort you to the VIP table. May I take your name for the seating chart?" Raina stopped beneath the largest chandelier and let the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. Every eye in the room was on them now. "You don't recognize me," Raina said. It was not a question. Kendra's smile faltered for the first time. "I'm terribly sorry, have we met?" Raina let her gaze travel slowly over Kendra's face, cataloging every micro-expression, confusion, then unease, then the dawning of something colder. "We have," Raina said softly. "Twice." She reached into the inner pocket of the white jacket and removed a single photograph. She held it up so Kendra, and half the room, could see Raina herself in the torn raincoat, standing in the alley that morning, accepting a breakfast plate from Sophia. Kendra's face drained of color so completely that her foundation looked like a mask. Raina tucked the photo away. "My name is Raina Copeland," she said, loud enough now for the entire restaurant to hear. "And tonight, Ms. Collins, the test is over." She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The room had gone deathly quiet. Kendra opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. Raina turned her attention to the terrace doors where Sophia stood frozen in the shadows, tray forgotten in her hands, eyes wide with disbelief and something that looked very much like fear. Their gazes locked across the glittering crowd. Raina inclined her head, the smallest gesture of acknowledgement and promise. Then she faced the room again and waited. The calm before the reveal stretched taut as a wire. In 30 seconds the entire world inside the Coral Lux was going to change. And not one person in the room, least of all Kendra Collins, had any idea how completely. The silence that followed Raina's words was so complete that the clink of a single champagne glass being set down sounded like a gunshot. Raina Copeland stood beneath the central chandelier, white silk suit glowing like a blade of moonlight, and let the moment breathe. 200 of Miami's most powerful people waited on her next sentence the way sailors once waited for a lighthouse beam in a storm. She did not make them wait long. "Bring Sofia Rivera to the private dining room," she said, voice calm, carrying to every corner without effort. "Now." Kendra Collins found her voice at last, thin and cracking. "Miss Copeland, there must be some misunderstanding. She's on disciplinary." Raina turned her head a fraction. The look she gave Kendra could have frozen the Atlantic. "I don't repeat myself, Miss Collins." 2 security officers in dark suits appeared as if the floor had opened and delivered them. They had been waiting in the wings for 72 hours, briefed, loyal, and very well paid. One touched his earpiece, listened, then nodded toward the terrace doors where Sophia still stood rooted, tray trembling in her hands. Sophia felt the room tilt. She heard her name spoken by the woman in white as though from the bottom of a well. Javier took the tray from her numb fingers. Someone else, she never saw who, guided her forward through the parted crowd. Phones rose like a metallic forest. She walked the length of the restaurant feeling every stare as a separate weight on her skin. The private dining room doors stood open. Inside, the long table had been cleared for the gala silent auction display, now pushed aside. Fairy lights still twinkled overhead, absurdly festive against what was about to happen. Raina entered first. Security followed with Sophia. Kendra tried to follow and found her path blocked by a polite but immovable arm. "Only Miss Rivera," the guard said. Kendra's face twisted. "This is my restaurant." "Not anymore," Raina answered without looking back. The doors closed with a soft, final click. Inside, the room was suddenly too bright and too quiet. Sophia stood just over the threshold, soaked uniform clinging, hair dripping from the terrace rain, eyes wide on the woman who had accepted eggs and $50 from her that morning. Raina touched a panel on the wall. A screen descended from the ceiling like a theater curtain. She lifted her phone, connected it with a single motion, and the screen flared to life. The first image was crystal clear, Raina herself in the torn raincoat, muddy sneakers, standing at table 12 the night before last. The timestamp read 9:47 p.m. Gasps rippled through the open doors where staff and guests now crowded, unable to stay away. Raina advanced the footage. The lobby of the Copeland, New York. The lounge in Las Vegas. 19 different properties, 19 different rejections. In Dallas a manager actually laughed. In Los Angeles security dragged her out while a celebrity filmed it for content. Each clip lasted only seconds, but the message was merciless. Then the Coral Lux footage began. Sophia paying for the lobster dinner with shaking hands. Sophia shielding Raina with her own body. The alley that morning, Sophia pressing her last dollars into a stranger's palm. Kendra's voice, tinny through hidden microphones, threatening termination, docking pay, forcing Sophia into the storm. When the audio played, Kendra screaming, "You have now violated direct orders twice in 24 hours. Your employment is terminated at the end of this shift." The entire restaurant heard it. A woman near the door began to cry. Someone else swore under their breath. Raina let the footage run to its end, then turned to face the room. "For 7 days," she said, voice ringing clear, "I have walked into 20 Copeland properties dressed as the person my mother was the night she was turned away and left to die. 19 times I was refused service, threatened, humiliated, or escorted out by security. 19 times the staff chose appearance over humanity." She stepped forward. The white suit caught every light and threw her back. Tonight was the 20th test. The final one. Her gaze found Sophia, softened for the first time. And the only one that mattered. Sophia's knees buckled. Someone pushed a chair behind her, she sat without feeling it. Raina lifted the phone again. A single photograph filled the screen, Evelyn Copeland, bald from chemotherapy, standing outside the Palm Beach property 20 years earlier, arm around a teenage Raina who looked exactly like the woman in the torn raincoat. "This was my mother," Raina said. "She died because someone decided she didn't look rich enough to deserve shelter. I swore that would never happen again under my name. Tonight I learned it has been happening every day." She turned to Kendra, who had forced her way past security and now stood pale and shaking in the doorway. "Ms. Collins, your treatment of both guests and staff has been recorded, documented, and witnessed by 200 people. You are relieved of duty effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You will leave this property and never return." Kendra's mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. "You can't. I have contracts." I own the contracts," Raina said simply. "And I own you out of them." The two guards took Kendra by the elbows. She did not struggle, she seemed beyond it. As they led her past the crowd, a path opened the way water parts for a shark. No one met her eyes. The doors closed again. Raina faced the room once more. The fairy lights reflected in her eyes like stars. In 20 properties, not one employee showed basic decency to someone who appeared poor. In this room, one did. She turned fully to Sophia. Sophia Rivera treated a stranger with dignity when it cost her everything. She is the only reason I still believe this company can be saved. Sophia could not breathe. The room spun gently, as though the floor had become a boat. Raina walked to her, crouched so they were eye level, and took both of Sophia's cold hands in her own warm ones. "I am so sorry," Raina said, voice low enough for only Sophia to hear at first, then louder so everyone heard. "I am sorry for every moment you suffered because of my test. You never should have been asked to pay that price." She straightened, still holding Sophia's hands. "As of this moment, Sophia Rivera is promoted to general manager of the Coral Lux Hotel." Her salary will be $250,000 a year, effective tonight. Every policy that caused pain under the previous management is revoked. And every employee who stood silent while cruelty happened will have the chance to prove they deserve to stay under the new one. A cheer went up from the staff, wild, disbelieving, cathartic. Guests joined in, some crying openly. Phones captured everything. Raina raised a hand for quiet. There is one more thing. She released Sophia's hands and reached into her jacket. She withdrew a simple white envelope and held it out. $10,000, she said. For your brother's treatment. Paid in full tonight. And a trust fund in his name for every future medical need, administered by the new Copeland Foundation. Sophia stared at the envelope as if it might vanish. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Raina smiled, the first real smile of the night, tired and fierce and radiant. You kept my mother's memory alive when no one else would, she said softly. Let me keep your brother alive for you. Sophia took the envelope with shaking hands. Then, in front of 200 strangers and every phone in Miami, she folded forward and cried the way people cry when the worst has already happened and grace arrives anyway. Raina knelt, wrapped her arms around the sobbing woman who had saved her faith, and held her while the room applauded until their hands bled. Outside, the Atlantic rolled in under a clearing sky, dark and endless and new. Inside the Coral Lux, the revelation was complete. And for the first time in 20 years, Raina Copeland felt the weight of her mother's death lift, just a little, from her shoulders. The applause had not yet died when Raina straightened and gently drew Sophia to her feet. The younger woman swayed, tears still sliding down her cheeks, the white envelope clutched against her chest like a shield. The private dining room doors had been thrown wide, staff and guests pressed shoulder to shoulder in the archway, unwilling to miss a single second of what was happening. Raina kept one arm steady around Sophia's waist and turned to face the room again. Some of you, she said, voice carrying without strain, have already heard the announcement. Let there be no confusion. As of this moment, Sofia Rivera is general manager of the Coral Lux Hotel. Effective tonight. Her authority is absolute. Every department head reports to her. Every policy that caused pain under the previous regime is hereby revoked. A low ripple of disbelief became a wave of cheers from the staff. Javier punched the air. The pastry chef, who had worked 16-hour shifts without complaint for 5 years, began to sob openly. Raina waited for the sound to crest and fall, then lifted the envelope from Sophia's trembling fingers and held it up so the room could see. Inside this envelope is $10,000 in cash, she said. It is for Mateo Rivera's immediate treatment. The hospital will be paid in full before midnight. Furthermore, a trust has already been established in Mateo's name. Every future dialysis session, every medication, every specialist visit will be covered for the rest of his life. No bills. No calls. No fear. Sophia made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. She covered her mouth with both hands, eyes shining. Raina turned fully to her now, the noise of the room fading to a hush. Sophia, she said, soft enough that the microphones on a dozen phones barely caught it, yet every person in the building heard. You gave away your last dollars to a stranger you thought had nothing. You stood in the rain for a woman you believed was homeless. You answered a desperate phone call with regret instead of anger when you had nothing left to give. I have spent 7 days looking for one person, just one, who still believed kindness was worth the cost. I found her in you. She took Sophia's right hand and placed the envelope into it, folding her fingers closed over the paper. This is only the beginning, Raina continued, raising her voice again. Because of what I witnessed here, because of Sofia Rivera, Copeland International is instituting a new policy across all 200 properties, effective at sunrise tomorrow. She lifted her phone. A single tap, and the screen behind her lit up with a simple graphic, a gold circle around the words Kindness Fund. Every hotel will maintain a restricted account seeded with $50 million from my personal fortune. No bureaucracy. No approval committees. Any staff member, from housekeeper to executive chef, may access the fund instantly for any guest or colleague in crisis, medical bills, funeral costs, a plane ticket home, a night's shelter. If a human being walks through our doors in need, money is no longer allowed to be the reason we turn them away. Ever again. The room erupted. Line cooks who had never earned more than $19 an hour hugged each other and cried. A concierge who had once been forced to deny a cancer patient a discounted room because a policy dropped to his knees right there on the marble floor. Former guests who had suffered under Kendra's reign, some of whom had come tonight only for the open bar and the gossip, began to clap in slow, stunned rhythm that built into thunder. An elderly woman near the front, elegant in midnight blue silk, stepped forward with tears on her cheeks. 2 years ago, she called out, voice trembling, your previous manager refused my husband a wheelchair because we were on the basic insurance plan. He fell in the lobby. No one helped. Tonight you gave that dignity back to every person who walks through any of your doors. Thank you. More voices rose, stories spilling out like floodwater. A mother whose autistic son had been asked to leave the pool. A veteran denied a service dog room. A teenager turned away from the prom package because her dress was from a thrift store. Each confession was met with fresh cheers, as though the telling itself healed something long broken. Raina let it wash over them all, eyes bright, jaw tight with emotion she rarely allowed the world to see. When the noise finally ebbed, she raised both hands. This fund will be administered locally by the general manager of each property, she said. And the first general manager to carry that responsibility is standing right here. She turned to Sophia, who still looked as though she might shatter from the weight of it all. Sophia Rivera, Raina said formally, do you accept the position of general manager of the Coral Lux Hotel, with all the authority, responsibility, and trust that title now carries? Sophia tried to speak and could not. She nodded once, hard, tears spilling again. Then she found her voice. Yes, she said, and it came out strong, steady, the voice of someone who had just been handed the keys to redemption. Yes, I accept. The room roared its approval. Someone started chanting her name. Within seconds the entire restaurant, staff and guests alike, took it up, Sophia. 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 Raina laughed through her own tears, a sound few people in that room had ever heard from the famously reserved billionaire. She pulled Sophia into a fierce embrace, holding her as if she were the only solid thing left in the world. When they parted, Raina kept hold of Sophia's shoulders and looked her in the eye. Tomorrow we begin the real work, she said quietly. But tonight, you go to your brother. You tell him he never has to be afraid of another hospital bill again. And you tell him his sister just became the most powerful woman in this building. Sophia managed a watery smile. Second most powerful, she whispered. Raina's answering smile was soft, almost shy. We'll negotiate titles later. She stepped back and addressed the room one final time. Tonight the Coral Lux closes to the public at midnight. Every employee is invited to stay. The bar is open, the kitchen is yours, and every bottle of champagne we own is to be drunk in celebration of the woman who reminded us what these hotels were always meant to be. She raised an imaginary glass. To Sophia Rivera. And to kindness, may it always cost less than cruelty. The cheer that followed shook the chandeliers. Later, when the initial frenzy had settled into laughter and music and the clinking of 1,000 toasts, Raina found Sophia at the edge of the terrace, staring out at the dark ocean as though she could not quite believe the night was real. Raina joined her, leaning on the railing beside her. I meant what I said, Raina murmured. The fund starts at 50 million, but it will grow. And every year on this night, we will add whatever profit the Coral Lux makes above projections. Your hotel will set the standard for the entire chain. Sophia turned, eyes luminous under the string lights. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Raina said simply. You reminded me why I fought to own these places. You reminded me who my mother raised me to be. She reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind Sophia's ear, a gesture so gentle it felt like absolution. Go to your brother, Raina said. Take the helicopter on the roof. It's waiting. Tell him everything. And when you're ready, come back and change the world with me. Sophia nodded, unable to speak. She started to walk away, then turned back and hugged Reina once more, hard and fierce. When she released her, Reina watched her go, white envelope clutched like a promise against her heart, disappearing into the glow of the hotel that was now, truly, hers. Behind her, the celebration continued long into the night. Champagne flowed. Stories were told. Old wounds began to heal under new light. And somewhere above the Atlantic, a helicopter lifted off carrying a sister toward the brother she would never have to lose again. In the restaurant that had once been ruled by fear, kindness had won its first and greatest victory. The reward was only beginning. The sun rose over Miami the color of fresh papaya, spilling gold across the Coral Lux's white facade and turning every window into a mirror of the new day. At 5:47 a.m. Sofia Rivera stood in the executive suite that had belonged to the regional director only 24 hours earlier, staring at her reflection in a full-length mirror she had never known existed. The new uniform fit like it had been sewn onto her body, crisp navy trousers, a white silk blouse with the hotel's crest embroidered in subtle gold over the heart, and a tailored jacket that made her shoulders look capable of carrying anything. A small enamel pin shaped like the Kindness Fund circle gleamed on her lapel. She touched it with careful fingers, half expecting the entire scene to dissolve like a dream at dawn. It did not dissolve. She pinched her forearm hard enough to leave a mark. Still real. Downstairs, the hotel was already awake and waiting. She took the private elevator, another thing she had never known existed, straight to the lobby. The night staff who had stayed for the celebration were gone, replaced by the morning shift. Every face turned when the elevator doors opened. For a heartbeat no one moved. Then Javier dropped his cleaning rag and started clapping. Within seconds the entire lobby staff, bellmen, concierges, front desk, even the florist arranging orchids at the welcome desk, were applauding the woman who had walked in yesterday soaked and broken and was walking out today in charge of them all. Sophia felt heat rush to her cheeks, but she did not look away. She lifted one hand in acknowledgement and walked straight to the concierge podium, the place where Kendra had once stood like a queen issuing edicts. "Morning meeting in the ballroom in 10 minutes, she said, voice steady despite the tremor inside her chest. Everyone. No exceptions. By 6:05 the ballroom was full. 300 employees filled the chairs usually reserved for weddings and conferences. Some still wore the previous day's uniforms, others had come in early just to be present. Sophia stepped onto the low stage, heels clicking once, twice, then silence fell so complete she could hear the ocean through the open terrace doors. "I'm not going to give a speech," she began, and a nervous laugh rippled through the room because everyone had expected exactly that. "I'm going to give you the new rules. There are only 3. She held up one finger. Rule 1, if a guest is hungry, we feed them. No questions about payment first. Ever. 2 fingers. Rule 2, if a staff member is in crisis, medical, family, whatever, we fix it. The Kindness Fund is live as of this morning. Forms are already in your email. Approval takes 60 seconds, not 60 days. 3 fingers. Rule 3, nobody, guest or employee, gets humiliated on my watch. If you see it happening, you stop it. If you're the one doing it, you're gone the same day. That's it." She lowered her hand. "Any questions?" Dead silence. Then someone in the back row began to clap. Slowly at first, then faster, until the entire ballroom was on its feet. Sophia felt the sound hit her like warm rain. By 7 o'clock she had signed her first 3 Kindness Fund requests, a housekeeper whose mother needed emergency surgery in Honduras, a bellman whose car had died and left him taking 3 buses to work, a line cook whose daughter required braces. Each approval took less than a minute. Each employee walked away crying. At 8 she walked the breakfast service herself, greeting every table, learning names, asking children what their favorite cereal was and making sure it magically appeared. She personally carried a tray to an elderly couple who had once been scolded by Kendra for asking for decaf refills. When she set down fresh cups and a plate of warm pastelitos, the wife reached out and squeezed her hand so hard her wedding ring left a mark. By 10 she had promoted Javier to restaurant supervisor, the pastry chef to executive sous, and the quiet night auditor who had always defended struggling staff to front desk manager. She did it in the lobby, publicly, handing each of them new name badges with their titles already engraved. At 11 the housekeeping director, a woman who had worked 31 years without a single raise under Kendra's regime, found Sophia in the corridor and simply hugged her without a word. Reina watched it all from the security office on the mezzanine, feet up on the desk, a cup of coffee gone cold hours ago. The wall of monitors showed every camera in the hotel. She had not left the property since the gala. She had not slept. She did not need to. Pride and something softer kept her wide awake. She watched Sophia laugh with a toddler who had spilled orange juice on her new trousers and wave away the mother's frantic apologies. She watched Sophia sit on the floor with a weeping porter whose wife had just been diagnosed with cancer and fill out the kindness fund form herself. She watched Sophia pause in an empty corridor, press both hands to her chest, and mouth the words thank you to whatever force had handed her this day. Reina's eyes burned. She did not wipe the tears away. At 1 o'clock Sophia slipped out the staff exit, still in uniform, clutching a small bouquet of white roses the florist had pressed into her hands. The helicopter was waiting on the roof to take her to the hospital, but she had insisted on driving herself. She needed the 20 normal minutes in traffic to believe this was her life now. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and hope. Mateo was sitting up for the first time in weeks, cheeks flushed with color because the dialysis had run that morning without anyone mentioning money. When Sophia walked in wearing the navy suit and the gold crest, his mouth actually fell open. "Sophie," he whispered. "You look like a president." She laughed through sudden tears and sat on the edge of the bed, careful of tubes and wires. She told him everything, the woman in the torn coat, the test, the gala, the envelope, the trust fund, the new job. She told him he would never have to choose between medicine and food again. She told him his sister was now the boss of the most beautiful hotel in Miami. Mateo listened with wide eyes, then reached out and touched the crest on her jacket as if it might disappear. "So the fairy tale was real," he said. "It was real," Sophia answered, voice catching. "And it's only the first chapter." They sat together until the afternoon light slanted golden through the blinds. Neither noticed the quiet knock, or the soft opening of the door, until Reina Copeland herself stood in the doorway in jeans and a simple white shirt, hair pulled back, no trace of the billionaire armor from the night before. Mateo's eyes went huge. He had seen her face on the news when the gala went viral before breakfast. Reina crossed the room and offered Mateo her hand like he was the most important person in the world. "You must be the brother who taught Sophia how to be brave," she said. Mateo shook her hand with all the solemnity a 14-year-old could muster. "She taught me," he answered. Reina smiled and pulled a chair close. She took an envelope from her pocket, thicker than the one from last night, and laid it on the blanket. "Inside is a full medical scholarship through the new Copeland Foundation," she said. "It covers everything, treatment, medication, travel for specialists, even college when you're ready. And when you walk for the first time after the transplant we're going to make sure happens, the Coral Lux is throwing you the biggest party Miami has ever seen." Mateo looked at Sophia, then back at Reina, then at the envelope like it might explode. Sophia found her voice. "You didn't have to come yourself." "I wanted to," Reina said simply. "Some thank yous can't be delegated." She stayed another 20 minutes, asking Mateo about school, about soccer, about the superhero comic stacked on his bedside table. When the nurse came in to check vitals, Reina stood. "I'll let you two have your evening," she said. At the door she paused and looked back at Sophia. "The helicopter is yours whenever you need it now. And the suite on the 15th floor is yours too. Bring your brother home to it when he's released. The ocean view helps healing." Sophia walked her to the door. In the corridor, away from Mateo's wandering eyes, she hugged Reina hard. "I don't know how to ever repay you," she whispered. Reina rested her cheek against Sophia's hair for a moment. You already are, she said. Every time you make someone feel seen today, you repay me. Every time you choose kindness when it's hard, you repay my mother. Just keep doing what you did in that alley. The rest takes care of itself. She stepped back, squeezed Sophia's hand once, and walked away down the corridor, just a woman in jeans who happened to own half the skyline. Back in the room, Matteo was staring at the envelope like it contained the future. Sophie, he said, voice small with wonder, I think we just got adopted by a billionaire. Sophia laughed until she cried again, and for the first time in years the tears tasted only of joy. 6 months later, the Coral Lux glowed against the Miami dusk like a promise that had learned how to keep itself. Travel guides no longer listed it among the city's most luxurious hotels, they listed it as the most human. Review sites overflowed with stories that began the same way, I arrived exhausted, broke, grieving, and ended, and they treated me like I mattered. The Kindness Fund had paid for funerals, cancer treatments, plane tickets home after hurricanes, wedding dresses for daughters of housekeepers, and one unforgettable night when the entire staff turned the ballroom into a quinceañera for a dishwasher's niece who had never believed she would have won. Every story carried the same quiet signature, a small gold circle pinned to every uniform, now recognized worldwide. Sofia Rivera stood at the entrance at sunset, watching the last golden light spill across the lobby she had made new. The marble floor still shone, but the cold perfection Kendra once demanded had been replaced by warmth, bowls of fresh fruit for anyone to take, a corner with coloring books and toys for children waiting on parents, a discreet sign that read if you need help, ask anyone wearing the circle. She wore the same navy suit, though now it was one of many. Her hair was longer, her eyes quieter. The tremor that used to live in her hands had settled into steady certainty. Guests greeted her by name, staff waved as they passed with easy smiles that had not existed 6 months earlier. Tonight the hotel was closed to the public for the first time since the gala. Every room was full anyway, occupied by general managers flown in from all 200 Copeland properties, here for the official launch of the Kindness Initiative worldwide. Tomorrow they would take home the blueprint Sophia had built, the policies, the fund, the culture that said profit was important, but people were sacred. The terrace doors stood open to the cooling evening. Sophia stepped outside and felt the familiar hush of the ocean greeting her like an old friend. She was not alone. Raina Copeland leaned against the balcony railing, dressed simply in white linen, hair loose and moving in the wind. She had arrived that morning without announcement, slipping in through the staff in trance the way she once had in a torn raincoat. Sophia had found her an hour later in the kitchen, eating a pastelito with the dishwashers and laughing at a joke in Spanish. Now Raina turned, eyes catching the last of the sun, and smiled the small, private smile that belonged only to moments like this. I was looking for you, she said. I was looking for you too, Sophia answered. I saved the best view. They stood side by side, shoulders almost touching, watching the sky turn from papaya to rose to deep indigo. Below them the hotel lights began to come on, one by one, until the Coral Lux floated on the dark like a ship made of warmth. Raina spoke first, voice low enough that only Sophia and the ocean could hear. 6 months ago I walked in here prepared to burn everything down, she said. I had the lawyers on standby, the sale documents drafted. I was ready to walk away from $12 billion because I thought nothing could be saved. She turned, eyes shining with reflected light. You changed my mind in an alley with a plate of eggs and $50 you couldn't spare. Sophia shook her head. You changed mine first. I thought kindness was a luxury I couldn't afford. You showed me it was the only thing worth affording. Raina reached into her pocket and drew out a small velvet box. She opened it to reveal a pin identical to the one Sophia wore, except this one was solid gold, the circle set with a single tiny diamond at the top. This is the master pin, Raina said. There are only 2 in the world. One for every property that earns the right to carry the Kindness Initiative forever. The Coral Lux earned it first. She pinned it carefully above Sophia's heart, next to the enamel version. The other one, Raina continued, voice catching just slightly, is for family. Sophia looked down at the pin, then up at Raina, eyes wide. I don't have brothers or sisters, Reina said. I lost my mother too young, and I built walls higher than any hotel I own. But 6 months ago a woman in a soaked uniform stood in the rain for a stranger and taught me that family isn't always born. Sometimes it's chosen in alleyways and hospital rooms and moments when everything is lost and someone decides to give anyway. She took Sophia's hands in both of hers. You are not my employee, Sofia Rivera. You are my sister in every way that matters. The suite on the 15th floor is yours for life. The trust for Mateo is yours to guide when he's older. And when I rewrite my will next month, your name will be in it beside mine. Because you gave me back the part of myself I thought died with my mother. Sophia's breath trembled out of her. For a long moment she could not speak. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Reina, holding tight the way she had once held Mateo after nightmares. The wind carried the scent of salt and night-blooming jasmine around them. Far below, the last lights of the hotel came on, until the coral lux blazed like a beacon against the dark water. When they pulled apart, Sophia kept hold of Reina's hands. Do you remember, she said, voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks, the first thing you ever said to me? Reina smiled, soft and knowing. I told you your heart was rare. And that you would be repaid 1,000 times over. Sophia turned to face the ocean, the hotel glowing behind them like a promise kept. True wealth, she said, repeating the words Reina had whispered the night she walked out into the storm, is measured in kindness, not money. She squeezed Reina's hand. Do good, she finished, and the world will answer. Reina rested her head against Sophia's shoulder, the billionaire and the woman who had once owned nothing, side by side on a balcony above the sea. Below them, the coral lux shone brighter than any star. Above them, the first star of the night appeared, small and steady and unafraid. And for the rest of their lives, whenever someone asked how two women from such different worlds became family, the answer was always the same. Once, a long time ago, one refused to let the other be treated as less than human. And the world answered. Fade to the two of them, silhouettes against the endless ocean, the poor woman and the billionaire bound forever by a single act of grace in an alley behind a hotel that learned how to love because one server decided kindness was worth the cost. True wealth.